Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man podcast. My name is Rory Paquette, and I know you know that already, but I just love to say it so that I can hear it, so that I can be grateful for the fact that I get to sit here in this chair, folks. When we made the move to 5 days a while ago, you folks showed up and you showed out and you helped us out, and I loved it. And then I pushed the envelope to 7 days, and you folks came out like crazy. And our Sunday episodes are actually some of the best listened to now ever, which it goes against all podcasting philosophy anywhere written in the world. So you folks are amazing, and I thank you all for listening, and just blessed to have you all here with me today. Now, if you all are friends of the program, and I bet you are, then you know what's coming next. We got to pay a couple of bills. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, that's good stuff. And you know what we're drinking? It's Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go look them up, check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. Folks, it's an absolutely fantastic cup of coffee. It's a mean bean. It's a fantastic brew. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans in their efforts, which is one of the biggest reasons why we support them. To all of our veteran listeners out there, we thank you all for your service, including the gentleman who's with us here today. And you all know that you have a home here, and we love you. So I'm glad you guys are here. Folks, go check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee, at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Let me get one more sip of this to keep up with this young buck across the table from me, who apparently is like out running with big, strong dogs and stuff. So I'm not sure I can keep up. There we go. All right, I'll be drinking that throughout the episode, but let me bring this guy on. Incredibly unique guest. Just in the short time I've talked to him, I'm fascinated already by all this. He is an Alaskan Malamute enthusiast. He's the author of two books, Maya the Malamute, A Spark of Courage, and Frozen Frontlines, which we're going to hear all about. He's also the leader of something called Maya's Spark of Courage Foundation, and he's a Navy veteran. Folks, the guy was tailor-made for the show, and I absolutely cannot wait to get into all this. Please welcome to the show, Jeff Knight. Jeff, how are you doing, brother?
I am good, Rory. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming on to talk about all this stuff. Now, we have a lot to talk about. I just listed a bunch of it. But why don't we just start with tell all our listeners, who is Jeff Knight? What are you about? And kind of what brings you to doing all this today?
Yeah. Grew up in a small town in Iowa. And my grandfather was my hero. My mom's dad served in World War II. He stormed the beaches of Normandy. He fought in all the five major invasions anyway, and in the European battlefield. And so I, sort of made up my mind early on that I wanted to go in the military and be like grandpa. And although my grandpa was in the army, I, went into the Navy and wanted to see the world, right, et cetera. And so, did my 4 year tour and I, got married and started a family, et cetera. And so, my wife, she had a therapy dog in college, wanted to do it again. And you never really know, Rory, if a dog's going to have the aptitude to be a therapy dog. It's not at the level of a service dog, but it's still a lot of training and a lot of discipline. And so, we had sort of purchased a dog and with hopes of doing the therapy work. And that's sort of how we got into uh, the volunteer stuff that we do with Maya, our therapy dog, who's Alaskan Malamute. And to sort of touch on Malamutes quickly, Rory, I always wanted a husky as a kid, and my mom said no, absolutely not. And when I got out of the Navy, came back home, obviously I, was an adult and living on my own, and I can do, essentially what I want. So um, at that time, I had a job, Rory, where I was at home a lot. So, doing some research online, and huskies seem to need a lot of attention, a lot of exercise, and I didn't really know, or didn't really seem fair, might be the right way to frame it, to get a husky. So, I stumbled into this breed known as the Alaskan Malamute while I was doing this research years ago. This was back in 2005, and read about the breed and was sort of intrigued by a lot of things, but they didn't really seem to need as much exercise and quite as much anyway. oversight as a husky. So I called a breeder and asked, her what her thoughts were. And this gal lived in Missouri, and she had said that she thought it'd be okay, right, if I wasn't home all the time anyway, a couple of times during the week on the weekends, as long as I had some space to roam. And the only stipulation, Rory, was that I'd owned a dog before, and I said yes, and she said, Malamutes aren't the breed for first time owners. So anyway, so I got him, named him Juno, and fell in love with the breed, and I said, it's the only breed I'll ever own, and since then it's the only breed I ever have owned. So I had quite a few Malamutes in my life, and I just think it's an incredible dog breed, for a lot of reasons. They're one of the oldest dog breeds on earth. The Saluki, the Basenji, and the Alaskan Malamute are the three oldest dog breeds on planet Earth. And they're so old, in fact, that they can't trace the specific wolf population that the breeds come from. Not to say that they don't, right, come from some wolf population somewhere in history, but if they do, we haven't found it yet. So that's sort of intriguing and interesting. The Alaskan Malamute is the only Native American dog breed, which is also pretty cool. And they have a history with humans, unlike any other breed. So, which we can get into some of that later. But fascinating breed and very very strong, very powerful. Just sort of give folks an idea. Huskies are sort of like the Mustangs of the dog world. They're bred for speed and pulling fast. Malamutes are not bred for that. They're sort of the quarter horses of the dog world. They're not runners. You wouldn't want to hook them up and run them in the Iditarod. They're heavy freighters, so they're used for hauling a lot of weight at slow speeds. And to sort of frame that for folks, slow speed would probably be like a mall walk, right? Like maybe 2 or 3 miles an hour.
Hmm.
So it's sort of the brief history of the breed, and they're from Alaska, right? Hence the name Alaskan Malamute, and they lived in the northern part of Alaska, in the Arctic Circle region. And there's really two bloodlines if you go back far enough. There's the coastal Malamutes who were smaller, right around 75, 85 pounds, and the inland Malamutes who were larger. Males can weigh up to 125 to 150. Some individuals are larger, which is rare, but it happens. So at any rate, that's sort of my story in a nutshell, Rory, and how we got into um, therapy work with Maya and sort of why we wrote a children's book.
That's interesting on a lot of levels. The very first thing that comes to mind, though, is that when I, read your profile and we were talking about, bringing you on, I heard Alaskan Malamute. My ignorance on the dog breed is pretty simple. I really didn't know what it was technically, but I instantly pictured the dogs in the dog sled, for some reason. And then you said husky a minute ago, and I went, wait a minute. I was thinking of a husky. That's right.
Yep.
And then I went, well, so what the heck is a Malamute?
Yeah.
And you started talking about it. Now I'm trying to picture it going, I know I've seen one before, but do you find that they get confused with other breeds like that, or am I just kind of an idiot over here?
No, you're not an idiot at all the time. Typically that's what people say is, oh, that's the biggest husky I've ever seen. And of course we say, well, and we have two Malamutes. And so we say, Maya or Max, they're not a husky, they're a Malamute. And typically leads to a conversation on, well, what's the difference? And like I said, Malamute is an older breed than a Siberian Husky. Huskies are cousins to Malamutes, and Malamute. So that they get the name Rory. They lived. So the people in Alaska who want to be called Inuit, the Malamute lived with a specific tribe who called themselves a Malamut. And that's where we get the name Malamute.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. So I mean, obviously, I can see your history with the dog. You love the breed. Um, I've loved my dogs too that I've had in the past. You decided to write a book telling the story of the dog. So kind of tell me what, number one, what's the book about, and what brought what that on, but what made you so impassioned about what the story was that you wanted to put it down, in a children's book like that?
Yeah, good question. So, this was my wife's idea, honestly. Full disclosure. We had Maya, we picked her up. The breeder told us that she was the runt of a litter of 10, and come feeding time, she wasn't able to fight off her brothers and sisters to get food, and so she wasn't eating, and Maya almost passed away. The breeder was telling us they had to nurse her, back to health, and she was so small, they couldn't bottle feed her, so they fed her with a syringe. And she says, touch and go there for a few days. And of course, we were, grateful that she had survived. And so we get home with her, Rory, and we had her maybe 4 days, I think. And she started to get really, really ill. And, so we called the vet, of course, and we live out in the country. And so, ran a stool sample into town, and the vet called us and said, you need to get here as fast as you possibly can. And so we uh, grabbed Maya. This is a Friday. Grabbed Maya and ran into town. And the vet told us that she had parvo, and that she probably wouldn't survive. He wasn't trying to be mean or callous. He told us that. I don't mean to be seem heartless, but with her virus count, we've just never seen a dog survive. So, we were pretty devastated, of course. And he said, if she survives, we'll have her till Saturday. So, basically a week and a day. And, we were driving home, of course. And I'm not afraid to say, I do a little crying on the way home. And, we did some praying. We got home, Rory, and we have some pastor friends as well that we reached out to. And said, we just got some devastating news about Maya, keep her in your prayers. And so the vet called me Monday and said, if she continues to make progress, this is Monday morning, you can come pick her up tonight. And of course, I was surprised to hear that. And I said, well, wait, what do you mean? And they said, yeah, we can't explain it, but she has made remarkable progress, and she's ready to come home. And I said, wow, that's incredible. So, I get in there, and they said that, over the course of Dr. Cornish, our vet, has been in practice, I think 4 decades. And they had said, we've had, over the course of our practice, of course, 5 puppies come in that had the same virus count that your dog had. None of them survived. And so we're just shocked, that she made it. And my uncle, Kendall, has bred the dog breed known as the Brittany, for many, many, many years, probably 4 decades as well. It's going to be coming up on it anyway. And he said the same thing, that all the puppies that they've had, that have left and gone to the owner that contracted parvo, none of them survive. So it's typically a death sentence, Rory, if a dog gets parvo. So so we sort of thought, um, you know, going back to what I said just a little bit ago, you never really know if a dog is going to have the aptitude. We sort of wondered, right, if God maybe didn't have something um, planned for her, something big, just to survive these early challenges. And so as we progressed through her training and we're impressed, she did really well, very smart. Which, I mean, the breed is very smart, but they can be stubborn because they were raised to be independent thinkers. So a lot of people think that they're not intelligent, but they're very intelligent. Maybe one of the smartest breeds on earth. And the reason why they come off as not so intelligent is because they know exactly what you say. They're just thinking themselves, well, no, I'm not going to do it. But Maya was a very well behaved dog, and still is, of course. And so anyway, she can certainly have that typical Malamute behavior. Well, she'll say no, but she's very food driven. So you just get out the right treat, and she's like, okay, you're right. Let's go do that. Right. So anyway, So when we knew, like when we had a really good idea that this was all going to work out. My wife's and so my wife is a University of Iowa alumni, and they have a therapy dog program over at Stead Family Children's Hospital. And so, that was our goal, was to see kids over at Stead Family Children's Hospital. And when we had a good idea that that was likely to happen, my wife said, we should write a children's book about this. She goes, I think it'd be really inspiring, for kids to read how Maya overcame serious challenges and overcame those. And so I said, yeah, um, that's really cool. I think you should do that. And she said, no, 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 you should do it. I had never written a book or a children's book really, but I said, I mean, I'll take a stab. So, wrote sort of a rough draft, and in my mind, Rory, I was sort of thinking of my daughter when she was a kid. How would I walk her through this story when she was young? And so that was my draft. My wife made some tweaks. It's collaboration really, and so that was the genesis of the book, was just to hopefully inspire kids fighting various illnesses in the hospital, and when we go see them, of course, right? And so that's how the book came about.
That's wow, that's really something. The You made a real point of saying that you got together and you prayed, brought pastors over, that type of thing, when your dog was ill. Is that part of the book also, talking about the faith that might have been behind it?
No, we so when I my first draft, my wife thought was a little maybe too adult, and so we really tried to gear it for younger kids. And so the main theme, of course, is love, and in the book, that's sort
Nice.
of our main Christian theme, is Maya's spark of courage, obviously, but really just love as well, right? That
Yeah.
love helped her conquer all this. And so I what they say, Rory, happy wife, happy life. And so I tried to and she's very smart. She's smarter than I am. So I try to sort of um, not do what I was told, so to speak, but take her suggestions and sort of run with those, I guess. So
Smart. Very
thanks.
smart. Very smart. How long you been married, man?
Yeah. So we've been married for 4 years.
Nice. Nice. And you've got one child?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. One daughter.
That's fantastic, man. Congratulations on that. Kids are the
Yeah.
best.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what, as soon as you said that was my wife's idea, I was nodding my head going, good move. Good move. Give her credit on the podcast. Absolutely. No, I just wondered about that, but I can understand. I mean, love is a fantastic place to start, especially if that's the message of the book. So, love that, man. Really do. I'm intrigued too. That's a true story. I mean, that's based on what she went through and how she came out of it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
amazing.
Yep.
It's amazing. How's Maya doing?
Good. So this isn't in the book. This more of an adult version, but although she survived parvo, it damaged a gland in her brain that produces a hormone that helps your kidneys process liquids. So we it was, I don't know, probably 2 months or so after we got her back, she was struggling and having potty accidents. And so we took her to Iowa State University. Of course, we went to our vet first, but he recommended that we go to Iowa State University and have her looked at, and so that's what we did. And they diagnosed her with this issue, and so we give her a desmopressin. It's a synthetic hormone, that your body produces, a hormone that helps your kidneys, and so we have to give that to her every day. It's in a little eyedropper, and so, but outside of that, she's a real trooper, and she's doing good outside of the hormone we have to give her, and as long as we give her her medication, she's a happy dog, loves to visit the kids over at said family, and she's a real celebrity over there, Rory. Everyone knows her name, and everyone. So it's Maya. No, no, we are, of course, but everyone knows Maya. So.
That's such a cool story, man. That really is. I love that. Now you wrote another book, Frozen Frontlines, and this is now having just found out that your grandfather was involved in this. Is that kind of what led you to this particular topic, or I mean, was it just your time in service? Where did this book come from?
Yeah, yeah. So good question. A little bit of both. Probably my grandpa would be the larger credit here. Was always really interested in World War II. Did a lot of reading and research when I was a kid. Because my grandpa wouldn't talk about the war. Then just kind of frame that. We took my grandpa to go see Saving Private Ryan when it came out. We took him to the theater to see it. I think it was what 1992 maybe, somewhere in there. And so after it was all over, we were leaving, and I asked my grandpa. I said, "Man, you did that? You stormed those beaches?" He goes, "Yeah." And I just was sort of in awe, and I said, "How did you survive all that? I don't understand." And he gave me an answer I'll never forget, real short and to the point. And he simply said, "By the grace of God." And that was all he said about it.
Yeah.
And so I always wanted to know more though, right? Like, and so I did a lot of reading, and so I sort of had this base knowledge, is my point, about World War II and different things that happened. And so I bought my first Malamute, like I mentioned earlier, and I was doing some research on the breed just to, sort of understand them more. They're a challenging breed for, a lot of reasons, but you know, sort of wanting to know more and be better at training and commands, etc. Trying to get inside the dog's head, so to speak. I ran across some decent articles online that talked about their service, the Malamute's service in World War One, World War Two, and they were pretty brief though. They didn't go in depth, but I thought it was really cool. How they were used in the wars, and so um, some years ago, I don't know, maybe gosh, 10, 15 years ago ish. I read a book about dogs in war, and I think it's just called War Dogs, I believe. And so there was a very brief page on how sled dogs were used in World War One, World War Two, and they briefly skimmed over Malamutes. And I, sort of thought, with the specific history that the Malamute has, unlike any other breed with humans, it's really sort of a disservice to not really dive into that and share that story. So, sort of been waiting, Rory, for a decade or so for someone to tell that story, right? And no one did. So I thought, well, I guess I can do it, I suppose. And so that was sort of the reason behind it.
Interesting. All right. So Frozen Frontlines is a historical fiction book that's based on all these facts, like the war, et cetera, and the dog's role. It's
Yep.
told from the standpoint of whom?
Ethan Carter is the main protagonist, and he's a musher. It's loosely based after the life of Dave Armstrong. And he had a book that he wrote about World War II, called Camp Remini, Memoirs of a of World War II. That's what it's called. And so I read that, found his story fascinating. He had in World War II there were very few, very few all breed, um, dog sled teams. But Dave had one of the few. He had an all husky team. And he served in Newfoundland, Canada during World War II. There's a giant air base up there that his team served. So that was sort of my inspiration behind this book. So sort of in the spirit of Dave's book is Through the Eyes of a Musher.
Nice. Okay. So the first book then, Maya the Malamute, that one is I mean, that's a children's book. It centers on love. We get who you're aiming for with that one. With this one, Frozen Front Lines, you're talking about historical fiction, World War II interest, story of a musher and a dog in that setting. Who are you writing that book to?
Yeah, good question. So, obviously, dog lovers, Malamute lovers, and hopefully veterans, as well. So, as a veteran myself, I try to throw some military terminology in there, that only well, I hope anyway, military folks appreciate, and maybe only military folks would understand. And I've got a character in there that's sort of in the spirit of my grandfather as well. So, anyone who appreciates what the generation did for the World War II generation did for us as well. I hope anyway they can see that, and I think also anyone who likes historical fiction.
Nice. Nice. Love this. I mean, very different, approaches to the book. Was this one more your idea as opposed to your wife's idea?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
To a degree. So I wrote the first three chapters and I gave it to my wife and I said, what do you think? And she said, can I be honest with you? And I said, yeah, just hit me. What do you got? And she said, I think it's terrible. And I said, oh man, ouch. So what's terrible? And she said, well, really everything. It's boring and I can't get into this at all. So I, sort of took a different approach with it, Rory. If the author, he passed away years ago, but the author James Michener,
Yeah.
who's real strong in the historical fiction space. I thought maybe, there's only one James Michener. Like I can't, no one can reproduce what he did. But I thought maybe if I sort of took that approach, possibly, or at least attempt to try to. So I read, quite a few of his books and took a different approach, a different stab at the book, and she liked that version a lot better. So she certainly has played a role, right, in this book, but the genesis of the idea was from me.
Nice. Sounds like your wife is quite the editor.
She is. It's funny, Rory. Like I said, she's really smart. She did a bunch of editing before we gave it to the publisher, and they gave it back to us and had very very few, just minor tweaks here and there. And I told my wife, I said, look, I mean, you did a job for him, and she said maybe I should be a book editor, and I said maybe you should. So
So you've heard this before. All right, I got you.
yeah.
Gotcha. I love that. I love what you're doing there. There's another aspect of you, another thing that you do that really was fascinating to me, especially in regards to, having put two books out, and that is that you teach leadership. So you're writing books about, similar, things here. And, you're a veteran and then you teach, like actually teach a class. And I verified this. I'm like, this is a real class. And then you actually teach this class in a school. And you went, well, yeah. You teach a class in leadership. I've never actually heard about a class in leadership outside of maybe in the service where they go over something, but in out in the real world. So I really just personally would love to hear about that. How did that come about? What do you teach in the class? How'd you get the job? I mean, anything you can tell us.
Yeah. So just for some background, I'm an IT. That's my day-to-day job, and everyone. Well, I should say most people, 90-ish% people in IT have a bachelor's degree. So, I wanted to go on and do something anyway. I achieved a few certs, but didn't really get me what I'd hoped. So I decided to pursue a master's and was looking at the genre, right, of graduate degrees offered at that level, and of course the MBA is sort of low hanging fruit. I mean, everyone does that, and I did look into the degree, Rory, but there's a lot of math, and I'm just not a huge fan of math, Rory. So I found this master's degree called an MSOL. It's a master's in science of organizational leadership. And as I looked at the coursework, I was really intrigued. And I think that for folks who don't know, maybe the best way to sort of frame this degree, Rory, is an MBA is really kind of the process side of leadership. There might be one or two possibly classes on, I don't remember, on the human side of leadership. It's more on numbers and processes. Whereas an MSOL is the other side of that coin. It's the people side of
Mhm.
leadership, and so it's there's a couple of classes, sure, that are on process, but the most of them are focused on human leadership, people leadership, and so took the course and I fell in love with a lot of the classes, honestly, and I was approached after I graduated, and they asked me if I was interested in teaching and I had said, yeah, not really. I mean, I honestly had never really thought about it, Rory. And so I said, let me do some thinking, and I did. I prayed and talked to my wife, of course, and decided, to try one class out, and it was at the undergrad level, and I really enjoyed it. It was an IT class, and I told the school, I said, uh, I will do this as long as you'll have me. I really enjoyed it, and so. Fast forward, I think it's about a year in, they asked me if I was interested in teaching a leadership class at the graduate level, master's level, and so you can teach one degree down unless you have a PhD, and then you can teach anything, right? Because there's nothing above that level. And so I was pursuing my PhD at the time, and so they got an exception letter from the board to let me teach since I was pursuing a PhD in leadership, by the way. And so that's how I sort of got started. And the class I teach is called Employee Ethics and Organizational Culture. And so,
Wow.
just to sort of frame that easily, it's basically a class that says, that teaches that people won't follow immoral leaders. And I know there might be some people laughing. And so I think maybe a better way to frame that I mean, people followed Adolf Hitler. I mean, so people will follow immoral leaders. But I think really what it's getting at is, those aren't people you want following you. Obviously, if you're doing, immoral things. And so that's really the the crux of the class is just how to be a moral leader. What is, how should you treat people? Um, you know, what motivates various folks, etc.
Wow. All right. I didn't even know that a class like that existed. That is absolutely fantastic and sorely needed in this world. Um, Let me ask you this. This is way off the cuff, and you always have the right to say, "Hey, you know what? Pass," if you don't like the question. But
Shoot.
sometimes I just kind of get overcome with something, and I don't
Hmm.
know. Holy Spirit says, "Go ahead and ask this question," and you go, "You know what? All right."
Sure.
You're someone who teaches leadership. You're a father. You're someone who has been very involved in, experiencing the courage and the loyalty of a very strong, dog breed. Um, all of these characteristics are kind of wrapped up in this veteran that I'm talking to right now. What do you think the status of our leadership in our country is right now, just in terms of what's being taught to our young folks?
Yeah, great question. It's very poor, on every level, right? You look at leadership at really any aspect in our society, American culture, federal government. You look at leadership in the aspect of corporate America. I mean, it is very poor. It's if it was if there was, we could point to one thing, Rory, and say it's this right here. We could have it solved, right? But so it's a lot of things that have led us here and got us where we are. But really, there's seven different leadership philosophies, and we don't have time to boil all those down. But one of them is servant leadership, right? That's just an easy one that everyone's heard of. And so, really the sort of backdrop, right, of that philosophy or mindset is leadership isn't about you, right? It's about the people you serve, right? And so when if you can sort of operate, because to just be clear, Rory, that the seventh philosophy is called situational leadership, which is sort of where you apply the philosophy that is needed in the moment. And so, all of them are valid. You just have to know when to use them, right? Which situation is appropriate for these. And so, if you sort of operate on servant leadership as sort of your base operating level, it's a good place, right? Because you're always thinking, how can I help you? How can I serve you, right? And it's very biblical as well. So, um, I don't think we see a lot of that in our society right now, right? It's and that's not leadership, obviously. And I think too, another component, Rory, and I'm just sort of taking off bigger chunks because there's a lot to dissect here. But the other
Right.
one would be if you don't have a passion for people, you don't have any business leading them, right? And there's a lot of people who just care about themselves, and so, well, then you shouldn't be leading, right? I mean, it's pretty simple, and I think leadership isn't just and I'm a leader, right, in the cybersecurity space where I work, and it's not just about helping people progress in their careers and give them promotions and a raise when they deserve it, et cetera, certs or continuing a degree, but it's also helping them be better humans. And so, how do we, as leaders, help people achieve their goals, but also how do we help them become better human beings? And if you're not doing that as an individual at the individual level, well, then you can't help other people do that, right? And I don't want to point any fingers, Rory, but I don't think we see a lot of that in our society yet.
Yeah, I love your answer and I really appreciate it. I don't get to talk to, that many leadership experts. And especially someone who teaches it, so I do appreciate you answering that. The
You're welcome.
Let me go back just a step here because you also, on top of everything else you're doing, man, I mean, because you needed something else to do. So, of course, you're the leader of the Maya's Spark of Courage Foundation. Brother, whenever you take enough time and enough heart, enough effort to put together a foundation, um, it is worth talking about. Tell us what that is. Tell us, who you aim to help, what it's about.
Yeah, yeah. So, and thanks for bringing this up. So, when we obviously have a children's book, and when we bring that book with us and hand it out to kids, obviously, for free, goes without saying. Kids we visit, up, appropriate age level, obviously. We donated a book to the children's library as well. They have uh, a few libraries in the hospital, but one it's dedicated, just for kids. And so we gave them the book, and they're super grateful, and we were sort of caught off guard, by that, and we were like, well, of course, and they were saying that their budget to buy books isn't very large, and most of the, not all, but most of the books they get are donations, and we were sort of surprised to hear that, and we had I had we discussed, and my wife and I discussed, and I called another hospital in Des Moines, and Blank Children's Hospital, and it asked them, how do you guys operate your children's library, your book library? And they said the same thing. It's budget small, and it's mostly donations. And so, my wife and I thought, boy, that's sort of sad. And we thought it would be a good idea to put together a foundation to raise money, so we can send out inspiring books, to these various libraries, St. Jude's, et cetera. They're all sort of in the same boat. So that's sort of the heart, in our thought behind the foundation is to purchase books that are inspiring, like our book about Maya, and hopefully, so we look for faith-based books as well, um, to send out and get in the hands of young kids who are, fighting battles, and I'm sure it goes without saying, when we do our visits, they can be pretty rough sometimes, because those kids are, a
Yeah,
lot of them are fighting, real serious stuff.
sure. Wow. Wow. Interesting story. Okay. How long has that foundation been around? How's that going?
Yeah, good question. We've only been, we opened it about 8 months ago, so
Ah,
we're
okay.
relatively young. And we've applied for a few grants, hoping to get some funding coming in. And then outside of that, we do some advertising as well, locally here in Iowa, to raise funds. So
Nice. So, by and large, is the foundation only operating on a local level right now with intentions to get bigger and serve others?
yeah, exactly. Yep, yep. We don't have enough money right now to expand that reach, but we certainly would love to. And again, been doing some praying about that, and hopefully the Lord will open those gates for us, and we can broaden our reach. So
I love it, man. You and your family really do operate from a servant's heart, man, with everything that you're doing. I love hearing about all these projects, everything you're putting out there. I mean, everything is to inspire and help that you're doing. So it's admirable, really is. Power to you, brother. This is some good stuff.
yeah, thanks, Rory.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
appreciate you. Um, I a lot of stuff to get through. I probably could sit here and talk to you about leadership for the next 2 hours at least. But we're sort of at our time that we try and stay within. So,
Sure.
as we kind of wrap this up here, I want to give you the floor for a minute or two. You talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. Any parting thoughts? Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to make sure you're getting out in terms of a message today? Maybe something that we talked about and you want to double down on, and make a point, or just any parting thoughts, for listeners, and what they're going through. Whatever comes into your head and your heart, go for it. But the last couple minutes are yours, brother. So go for it.
Yeah, thanks. So, I think I'll uh, use these terms, Rory. You know, Maya is a special dog for sure. I don't want to take anything away from her. Um, but the breed in general, they're happy workers. They don't know when to stop, don't know when to quit. Their courage knows no bounds. Just to sort of frame that for people. Um, you know, you look at where the Malamute people has lived historically, and they lived alongside polar bears, Arctic wolves, timber wolves, and in the summer, Kodiak brown bears. And so, I mean, they're just in dangerous territory. And the men, they left the female dogs, Rory, home with women and children. And when the men would go hunt, they would take the male dogs with them. And when they did, these apex predators, they never approached. They would stand off at a distance and just watch. And I think we would all agree that sort of respect isn't given, right? It's earned. And so they're a formidable breed for sure. They love humans. They're the worst guard dog. Well, I mean, I guess they're good in the aspect of you don't know them. They're large and scary looking, but they love humans. So if someone actually broke into your house, they wouldn't do anything, right? But except maybe lick them. But if you're a wild animal, that's the last dog breed that you want to run into. So where I'm going with this, Rory, and we live in challenging times, and it's not easy out there, and it's easy to forget. I think, at least I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it's easy to forget who we serve and the mission that we're all on, right? As Christians, and I try to take some inspiration from this breed, who just loves everybody. Neither one of them knows a stranger, right? The courage that they have, and I think too, you look at how they lived for thousands and thousands of years in the Arctic. I mean, it's obviously it's one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. But they slept outside, even in the winter where temperatures could be negative 100 degrees. Doesn't bother them. I mean, they are as tough as nails. And I think, you know, not that life's ever been easy, but we have some very unique challenges in our day and age, and so I just want to pass on some encouragement to folks. You know, it's hard, but my grandpa had a quote, and I think he's sort of stole it from the legendary Green Bay Packers head coach. Um, and he would say, my grandpa would say, the measurement of a man isn't how he falls down, but how he picks himself up again, right? And so, you know, I have always been inspired and encouraged by this breed. And like I said, the 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 thing that sort of amazes me is, and I wish I could. And I honestly thought about this, Roy, before I came on. I've thought about it a few times. There's, and this might sound a little strange to people, but there's some connection with this breed that people have. In it's something. There's a spiritual connection to it, Rory. I don't know what it is. Lived alongside him for nearly 30 years, and I still don't know how to put it into words. But they're a special dog for a lot of reasons, a lot of work, but like little kids, right? It's worth it. And so, you know, if you can look at God's creation, Rory, and say, you know, um, there are specific attributes, right, in creation. You can look at them and say, um, how fearless and courageous they are, how much love is in them. I think that it's easy to lose some perspective, is my point, right? In this, because we're all distracted, right? Is sort of where I'm going with this, and so just try to stay focused, folks, and it's hard, but all into this, Rory. Jan Markell says all the time, the world isn't falling apart; it's falling together, and so don't forget that.
Great way to end, man. I mean, that was a wonderful wrap up. Really and truly, has been a fantastic interview. I've learned a ton, and you're doing really admirable work out there, brother. And I did not know what to expect when I came on this podcast today. I just said, you know what, hey, it sounds interesting. Let's go find out some stuff. I'm incredibly impressed with what you're doing. And with your love for this particular dog breed, with what it means to you, with what you take from it, the symbolism and stuff, it's amazing, and you're doing really good work with it. So I hope you keep it up. I'm sure you will. And yeah, I would love to have you back on here again in the future. Let's talk about that foundation some more and get the word out. How do people reach you, reach the foundation? Do we have links for all that? Can I get them from you? Put in the show notes. Tell people how they can reach you.
Absolutely. Yep. So you can find us on social media. Maya's Spark of Courage Foundation, and we have a website as well. Just called mythemalamute.com. And there's a tab on that website about our foundation, and there's a link you can donate as well. And I'll share those links with you, Rory.
Perfect. Perfect. We'll have them all in there. All right. Goodness. Author of Maya the Malamute, A Spark of Courage, and Frozen Frontlines, and leader of Maya's Spark of Courage Foundation, Jeff Knight. Jeff, thank you for being with us today, brother. It's been really, really exceptional having you on today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rory.
Folks, this has been another fantastic episode of the Power Man podcast. The reason that we bring powerful men like this on here with these incredibly powerful messages, sometimes you don't even see them coming, like today, which was just absolutely amazing. The reason we do that is because we are united in supporting you in regaining your power to become a better protector, a better provider, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, to become a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And folks, the reason we want that for you is because you have value. It's because you matter. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.